What's going on, Dolphins fans? Jacob here, Miami Dolphins Syndicate. A video that I do not want to make, a season that I certainly did not see coming and is not going to get better anytime soon. And you click on the title, and I'm sure a bunch of you right away will be probably angry, will probably think I'm crazy, because I talked to Donovan about this and he thought I was crazy too. But title of the video, the Dolphins should trade Jaylen Waddle. Where does this stem from? This team is going nowhere quick. First things first. This team is going absolutely nowhere right now. Staring at the Buffalo Bills, 2-6. With how the Rams are playing with Matt Stafford, with Puka, with Cooper Kupp, with when that offense is fully healthy, I think we're going to be 2-7 in 2 weeks' time. And obviously, at that point, the season is really over. Even though right now, I do think the season is really over. You're looking at what this team is. This team is the oldest team in the league. A team with a defense with a bunch of one-year contracts, with an offensive line that is really held together by glue, a team that has invested so heavily into a few of its lethal offensive weapons, being Jaylen Waddle, being Tyreek Hill, and being Tua. Tua, not trading, obvious reasons. Quarterback just locked into a massive contract that, for one, nobody would take on. And he is certainly the furthest thing from the problem currently going on with the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill is the easiest finger to point, say, oh, trade Tyreek Hill, but 30-year-old receiver, big contract. I can certainly see a team making a move for Tyreek Hill just on the basis of winning right now. But Jaylen Waddle is the asset that is the most tradable in terms of what you would get back. He will garnish a pretty hefty return coming back from a team that would look to trade for him. This is not an indoctrination about Jaylen Waddle as a player necessarily, because I do have some criticisms of Jaylen Waddle. The drops are continuing to be a thing. One or two drops, including the drop really at like the 5-yard line, which it didn't ultimately affect the Dolphins put points on the board because they did end up scoring a touchdown on that drive. But the drops continue with Jaylen Waddle season after season, and Tyreek Hill is clearly the one in this offense. We thought it was going to be a 1A, 1B situation, and Jaylen Waddle has had multiple 1,000-yard seasons for the Dolphins team. However, he is just not quite taking that next step to be the superstar wide receiver we took at the 6th position in the draft. Jamar Chase in front of him, obviously one of the top receivers in the league. Right next to him, Devontae Smith. I'd say they're on a pretty even playing field where Devontae Smith is behind a clear alpha receiver and still getting work done. However, that Eagles team has a more clear direction in terms of making the playoffs. They've already made the Super Bowl once. They've lost that. But how this team is playing, the Eagles are certainly not at 100% just in terms of what they can play up to. This is a team that can get better. And while it's not been pretty, have been getting better over the last few weeks. Dolphins going in the complete opposite direction. Jaylen Waddle's 25 years old. Every season up to this point, he has gotten over the 1,000 yards mark, albeit two of those three were 1,014 and 1,015 with a 1,300-yard season in the middle of those two seasons. But is clearly a talented player. He's still very young. But where we've seen him play, how we've seen him play, you don't get quite the physical component you see in certain NFL wide receivers. You don't get as much of the speed that you get with Tyreek Hill. He is a all-around good receiver that doesn't have necessarily one calling card in terms of what kind of guy he is. He's not, one of the best route runners in the league. He doesn't have one of the best hands in the league. He's not the tallest. He's not the biggest. He's not the strongest. He's not the fastest. He is, of all those things, he can do all those things and be a good receiver. He can go and high point a pass. He can beat you at the line of scrimmage. He can beat you downfield. He has definitely questions about his hands. Every single game, it feels like with Tua, that he has a drop, one or two drops here or there, and that is certainly concerning for me. It's not about who Waddle is as a player necessarily, though. It is where this team is. And I'm going to eventually make a video talking about the Dolphins being full on probably looking at another rebuild. But I do think that's where the Dolphins are going. I think we are looking at another rebuild. And to go through a rebuild, to have to build up a team, you don't need necessarily wide receivers. Wide receivers are awesome when the rest of the team is looking good. Look at exactly what's going on right now in Los Angeles. Justin Herbert's best wide receiver, Ladd McConkey. Rookie, not a first-round pick, has shown some flashes, but is certainly not the cream of the crop in terms of his wide receiver class. Is currently coming off of his best week as a rookie in the NFL. Got in the end zone, looked good, looked explosive, right? It was wide open for that touchdown, right? But he's not or just that wide receiver core in general is nowhere near talking about. I mean, Justin Herbert's going through it. They're just spawning tight ends left and right that I have never heard of, wide receivers that I've never heard of, and you look at them, they've got a winning record because they have a stable run game, they have a good defensive line, and they're rebuilding the team with young pieces. They let Keenan Allen go. They let Mike Williams go. They let Austin Eckler go. They let their skill position players go that in recent years were a big reason why that Chargers team was so successful. But in doing so, they committed to building up the offensive line, the defensive line, got in a new head coach. They went the direction of what traditionally works in the NFL, and that is building up a strong offensive line, strong defensive line, good head coach, good quarterback, and figure the rest out. Dolphins have gone the opposite way around. A lot of money into 2 wide receivers, in your quarterback, a quarterback that has health issues in terms of staying healthy, a quarterback that isn't the most athletic, a quarterback that has a limited ceiling, but certainly a really, really high floor, wide receivers that are quick, that are athletic, that are playmakers, but they lack physicality. They lack some bite to them, just as the entire offense does. Even with the running back, I love how Devon Achane has played this year. Even in games without Tua, he has sometimes been the lone explosive piece to still get his going on the field. But again, undersized, lack of physicality in front of him on the offensive line. This team is built backwards. It's built with flash and flair and big playability. But when it comes down to it, you just have to punch somebody in the mouth and out physical them. I've said time and time again, this Dolphins team lacks the ability to do so. So why trade Jaylen Waddle? Why let go one of your younger, promising wide receivers, skill position players? Why would you do that? I think mostly because of what you could still get back for him. You're probably looking at a first round plus. He's on his rookie contract, even though he does have an extension coming around the corner. So you will still be able to pitch to another team that you're not paying him a whole lot of money. I believe his contract's around $5 to $8 million annually. That's what's going to be on the cap, right? You're not going to have to pay a lot of money these next 2 years, next 1 year actually. So the rest of the season, and then next year his 5th year option, which obviously will be picked up. It will be cheap before that 3-year, $80 million contract does pick up from Jaylen Waddle. And the question marks I do have about his ability to bring something to the identity of the offense that we don't already have. Tyreek Hill is obviously one of the best players in the league. He is so great at what he does and is that explosive playmaking, speed, undersized guy. Where I was talking about in the offseason with Donovan, and I maybe mentioned on the channel here, like if at the beginning of the season, and now obviously I don't think you could do this, if you could have just swapped DK Metcalf for Jaylen Waddle, I would have taken that in a heartbeat because he adds something different to this team. He adds a level of physicality, of strength, while still maintaining that speed with more reliable hands and a better track record of getting it done, especially with poorer quarterback play around him. Jaylen Waddle, with poor quarterback play around him, usually shrinks. He doesn't have as reliable hands, and he's not as much of a presence to the game. I like Jaylen Waddle as a talent. I like him as a player. But this Dolphins team is going in a very bad direction right now. You're looking at a probably entirely revamped defense next year with a few exceptions like Javon Holland, Zach Sealer. Jalen Phillips is going to come back healthy, but I expect Jalen Ramsey to be out the door. Calais Campbell, Poyer. You're looking at a whole bunch of guys that were brought in on shorter term deals to try to just build this defense up for one more year, try to last it out. This team has really pushed in its chips for this year and the year prior and haven't got it done. You made the playoffs last year, lose to the Chiefs, didn't really have a dog in the fight almost the entire game, the Dolphins did. And then this year, 2-6 next week. I believe 2-7 against the Rams. And then the back half of the schedule does not get any easier with the 49ers, with the Texans, and some teams that could do some damage, and a Dolphins team that isn't looking quite impressive themselves. When you point the finger at the Jets and saying what they're doing wrong, what the Patriots are doing wrong, there's so many fingers that can be pointed back at the Dolphins and what they're doing wrong. I don't want to trade Waddle, but just in terms of what you could get back, what you could then build up the team in different ways to try to begin this rebuild, which I really think is going to happen, I would do it. I would move Waddle if you can get a first and a third, a first and potentially some help on the defensive line, a younger piece on the defensive line. Looking at a Kansas City Chiefs team which just brought in Josh Uche, maybe get a younger piece of that defensive line and a first round pick from the Chiefs. It sucks handing them another Super Bowl, but if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. I don't think this will happen. on the grounds that I think Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel are both playing for their jobs right now. Mike McDaniel, obviously head coach, so more of a direct hand in what happens with this team. But Chris Greer, I do not think with all that he's pushed in, with potentially his job being on the line, he would be willing to get rid of one of his most prized possessions right now. I think that would just ultimately seal his death. So I don't think this will happen, but this would be something that I would certainly consider if I was the Miami Dolphins. Call me crazy, I'm sure you will. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this potential move and a potential rebuild in general for the Miami Dolphins. While down there, hit that like button, hit that sub button. Appreciate y'all very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Go Dolphins.